You know, there are some voices that never really leave your head, some words that burrow so deep into your soul that decades later, you can still hear them as clearly as if they were spoken yesterday. My mother's voice is one of those voices. My name is Rebecca, and I'm 57 years old now. I have a successful marketing career, a loving husband, and a teenage daughter who lights up my world. By most people's standards, I have what you'd call a good life. But that's not how my story started. Let me take you back to 1978, when I was 17 years old and lived in a house that looked perfect from the outside. White picket fence, manicured lawn, my mother's prized rose bushes lining the walkway. We had Sunday dinners together, family photos on the mantelpiece, everything that screamed happy family. I was the girl who made honor rolls every semester, edited the school newspaper, and had college acceptance letters lined up on my dresser. I should have been confident, excited about my future. Instead, I was the teenager who spent hours getting ready for school only to change outfits 3 times, because nothing looked right. I was the young woman who ate lunch alone in the cafeteria, not because I didn't have friends, but because I was too ashamed to eat in front of other people. But if you knew what to listen for, you'd hear the cracks. Rebecca, honey, you really need to do something about your weight. Those words, every single morning before school, like clockwork. My mother would stand in our kitchen, perfectly dressed, her hair styled just so, and she'd look at me with what I thought was love, what I now know was disappointment. No man will ever want you looking like that. I was 17. I should have been worried about algebra tests and college applications. Instead, I was standing in front of my bedroom mirror every morning, wondering what was so wrong with me that my own mother couldn't love me as I was. You have to understand something about my mother, Linda. She was what people back then called a handsome woman. Everything about her was controlled, calculated, perfect. Her weekly appointments at Margie's beauty salon, her clothes pressed and coordinated, her figure maintained with military precision. She took pride in appearances. Her appearance, our house's appearance, and most painfully, my appearance. Every meal became a battlefield. Every outfit choice became a criticism session. Every glimpse in the mirror reminded me of her voice. Maybe you should skip the potatoes tonight. That dress makes you look bigger. I was never this heavy at your age, but the worst part, the absolute worst part, was how she disguised it all as love, as a concern, as maternal guidance. I worry about your health, sweetheart. Heart disease runs in our family. I'm just looking out for you. The world is hard enough on women without giving people reasons to judge you. And when her bridge club friends came over for their weekly coffee gatherings, oh, that's when the real knife twisted. I'd be upstairs doing homework, and I'd hear their voices drifting up through the thin walls. She's such a pretty girl, Mrs. Henderson would say diplomatically. And then my mother's voice, dropping to that conspiratorial whisper, she has such a beautiful face. If only she'd lose some weight. I keep telling her, men don't want to marry fat girls. Look at Jenny Patterson, she's half Sarah's size and already engaged. The shame wasn't just in the words, you understand. It was in the whispered tone, as if my appearance was a family secret too shameful to discuss at normal volume. My father, he'd retreat behind his newspaper whenever these conversations started. Your mother just wants what's best for you, he'd mumble when I'd seek his support. But his eyes never met mine when he said it. When I left for State University in the fall of 1979, I carried more than just my suitcase and textbooks. I carried 17 years of criticism, self-doubt, and the bone-deep belief that my worth was measured by a number on a scale. But something unexpected happened in that dorm room. My roommate Maria was this confident girl from California who ate pizza at midnight and wore whatever made her feel good. One evening, we were studying together. And she looked up from her textbook and said, "You're beautiful. You have these incredible eyes and the most genuine smile. Your mother must be so proud." I stared at her, completely stunned. "She thinks I'm fat." Maria tilted her head. "She thinks you're fat." "Or you think you're fat?" Nobody had ever asked me to separate my mother's voice from my own before. That question changed everything. College became my sanctuary. I discovered that people valued my mind, my humor, my kindness. I joined the debate team, wrote for the campus newspaper, made friends who saw me as more than my dress size. Slowly, gradually, my confidence grew. But the transformation wasn't immediate. It took years of therapy sessions, of learning to silence my mother's voice in my head, of understanding that my worth wasn't determined by my appearance. When I finally decided to focus on my health, not for my mother's approval, but for my own well-being, the weight came off naturally. I found joy in cooking healthy meals and discovered I actually enjoyed running. By 1985, I'd lost 40 pounds, not through crash diets or my mother's constant nagging, but through finding peace with myself. The first time I visited home after my transformation, my mother's reaction was immediate and telling. "Oh my goodness, Rebecca, you look incredible." She hugged me tightly, and for a moment, I thought maybe things would be different now. Maybe she'd finally see me as worthy of love. Then she said, "I always knew you could do it. I'm so proud of how I raised you to take care of yourself." My stomach dropped. Even now, even after all my success, she was finding a way to make it about herself. "Actually, Mom," I said carefully, "I did this for me, because I wanted to be healthy." "Well, of course, honey, but you have to admit, all those years of me encouraging you to lose weight finally paid off. I never gave up on you." I stared at her, wondering if she truly believed her own words or if she was simply rewriting history to cast herself as the supportive parent she'd never been. The years that followed brought more success. I was promoted twice, bought my own condo, traveled to Europe, built a life that made me genuinely happy. I also met David, a kind man who loved my laugh and admired my intelligence long before he ever noticed my appearance. When I announced my engagement in 1989, my mother's response was predictable. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so happy for you. You see, I always told you that once you lost that weight, you'd find someone wonderful." All my advice finally paid off. The wedding planning became a minefield of her attempts to take credit for my transformation. At every turn, she'd tell anyone who would listen, "I'm so proud of how my daughter turned out." I always knew she had it in her. I never stopped believing in her. 3 weeks before the wedding, I sat in my therapist's office, struggling with what to do. "She's making it sound like she was my biggest supporter," I said through tears. "But Dr. Williams, you know what she put me through. You know how many sessions we've spent undoing the damage from her words. What would you like to say to her?" Dr. Williams asked gently. "I want to tell her that she almost destroyed my self-worth, that I succeeded despite her, not because of her. That her motivation was actually emotional abuse. And what's stopping you?" I was quiet for a long moment. "Because she's my mother, because family is supposed to forgive, because I'm tired of fighting." Dr. Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes the most powerful statement we can make is not what we say, but what we don't say." The wedding day arrived in early June. Perfect weather, beautiful venue, surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated my happiness during the cocktail hour. I watched my mother hold court with her bridge club friends, regaling them with her revised version of history. "I always told her she was beautiful," she said, her voice carrying across the garden. Even when she was heavy, I said, "Rebecca, you have such a pretty face. Once you lose that weight, you'll be stunning." I never gave up on her, for a moment, standing there in my wedding dress, I felt 17 again, but then David appeared at my side. Squeezing my hand, "You okay?" he whispered. I looked at my new husband, then at my mother, then at all the people who had truly supported my journey. "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it, when it came time for the speeches. I stood at the microphone with my champagne glass raised, the crowd quieted, expecting the usual thanks to parents and in-laws. "I want to thank everyone who's here tonight," I began, my voice clear and strong. Marriage isn't just about finding someone who loves you, it's about becoming someone worthy of love. That journey taught me that the most important voice in your life is your own. I paused, looking out at the crowd of faces, college friends who had seen my potential, colleagues who had mentored me, therapists who had helped me heal. I want to specifically thank everyone who believed in me, who saw my worth when I couldn't see it. Myself, who celebrated my successes and supported me through my struggles, who taught me that real love doesn't come with conditions or criticism. My eyes met my mother's across the room. She was smiling, assuming she was included in this gratitude, too. Everyone who told me I was enough, exactly as I was, thank you. To everyone who helped me become the woman standing here today, this is for you. The crowd erupted in applause. But I watched my mother's smile fade slightly. She looked around, perhaps beginning to understand that her daughter's carefully chosen words had excluded her. After the reception, as the last guests departed, my mother approached me. "Sweetheart, that was a beautiful speech," she said, her voice uncertain. "I just want you to know how proud I am of you." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw a woman who had probably received her own share of criticism, who had been taught that love came with conditions, who genuinely believed that her harsh words had been helpful. "Thank you, Mom," I said simply. She waited, perhaps expecting more, but I had nothing else to say. I had learned that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't anger or confrontation, it's the quiet dignity of living well despite it. Years later, when my own daughter was born, I looked at that tiny, perfect face and made a silent promise. I would tell her she was beautiful just as she was. I would celebrate her accomplishments without taking credit. I would offer love without conditions. Because I had learned that the cycle of criticism and shame stops when someone decides to be brave enough to break it. The appearance of shame that had defined my teenage years became the foundation for my strength as an adult. Not because my mother's criticism had motivated me, but because surviving it had taught me the difference between love and control, between support and manipulation. You see, family betrayal cuts deepest not because of what is done, but because of what is stolen: our sense of safety, our trust in love, our belief in our own worth. My mother didn't just criticize my appearance, she stole my confidence, my self-worth, my ability to trust my own judgment. She made me believe that love was conditional, that I had to earn my place at the table, that I wasn't good enough just as I was. But here's what I learned: healing is possible, forgiveness is possible. And sometimes the most profound healing comes not from receiving an apology that may never come, but from refusing to let someone else's brokenness define our wholeness. My mother never apologized. She never acknowledged the damage her words had caused. Even to this day, I don't think she truly understands what she did to me during those formative years. But that's okay, because my healing didn't depend on her recognition, my worth didn't require her validation, my success wasn't defined by her approval. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you have a mother, a father, a family member who made you feel small, unworthy, not enough, I want you to know something. Their words were never about you. They were about their own pain, their own insecurities, their own inability to love unconditionally. You are enough. You have always been enough. You don't need to change, transform, or prove yourself to be worthy of love. And if you're a parent, Watching this, please remember, your children are not your projects. They are not your second chances. They are not reflections of your worth. They are human beings deserving of unconditional love, acceptance, and support. The words you speak to them today will echo in their heads for decades to come, make sure. Those echoes lift them up rather than tear them down. My mother's voice still echoes in my head sometimes, but now it's joined by other voices, my therapist's words of wisdom, my husband's expressions of love, my daughter's laughter, my own inner voice that finally learned to be kind. And that's the voice that matters most. Sometimes the most beautiful revenge is simply living well. Sometimes the strongest statement we can make is not what we say, but what we choose not to say. And sometimes the greatest victory is not in confronting those who hurt us, but in refusing to pass that hurt on to others. In the end, my story isn't really about weight loss or wedding speeches. It's about finding the courage to love ourselves when the people who should have loved us unconditionally failed to do so. It's about breaking cycles of shame and building new legacies of love. Because that's what real strength looks like, not the ability to tear others down, but the grace to build ourselves up, despite those who tried to keep us small. My name is Rebecca, and this is my story. Thank you for listening.